What's going on, y'all? It's Liam Crowley with Screen Rant, and I'm here with the co-authors of The Court of the Dead, a Nico di Angelo Adventure, Mr. Rick Riordan and Mark Oshiro. Guys, thank you so much for taking some time to chat today.
Totally, always a
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Absolutely, guys. It's cool to get to continue this side of the Percy Jackson world, to continue to flesh out this side of Greek mythology, spotlighting Nico and Will. I have to ask you both up front. This is the second time you've worked together, co-authoring a book in this world. I can only imagine the shorthand has grown, the chemistry has grown. How did it feel stepping back into this world as collaborators this time around? Mark, we can start with you.
Yeah, and literally said this minutes ago with someone else too, it's never easy writing a book. Writing a book always feels sort of like a gargantuan task in a way. This was easier than the first time. I think part of it was just not having the fear that I did the first time around of being intimidated of writing in someone else's world. It was very much like, oh, I've done this already. I know what I'm doing. Let's go. And also not having the fear of, well, what if I do it wrong? What if I do it in a way that fans don't like? I think the response to Sun and the Star was so immense and supportive. It was like, let's go. And I think that is also why this book is so unhinged, is I don't think either of us were sort of afraid of doing things differently. From a structural standpoint, from a story standpoint, introducing a lot of new characters, and then also kind of breaking the world a little bit and saying, let's think of even very basic elements of, the Percy Jackson mythology and thinking of them differently. So what a blast it was to write this.
Mm-hmm. And Rick?
Oh, no, totally agree with all of that. It was a pleasure, and it was definitely an act of breaking and repairing, but making even better, I hope, the world in which Percy and friends live. We turned everything on its head, and I think readers will really appreciate that and kind of have their minds blown. We're questioning things as simple as who's a hero and who's a monster, and how do you tell the difference? And it's not always what you might think. And I agree, it was also the second time around much easier. And I think there was kind of yeah, I mean, there was a shorthand that did help kind of bring us, which is a good thing because as Mark was describing this a bit earlier, it is really like Nico and we'll go to the circus. I mean, it is, there's so much going on. There's so many different places to look.
Amazing. You kind of touched on my next question there with the questions of who's a hero and who's a villain. The narrative structure of this book is one of my favorite structures when it comes to these larger than life franchises, and that is when a certain franchise gets to a certain point of doing all the world ending stuff, when we get to tell those intimate stories, it becomes so fascinating. When The Force Awakens got to tackle what if a stormtrooper turned to the light side, when the Avengers world gets to deal with what does a civilian's life look like when their car gets flipped upside down by the Hulk, the idea of monsters taking refuge at Camp Jupiter from the underworld is like such a genius new layer to this super fleshed out world. I'd love to know for you both where the concept for that story first came about.
Rick's the start of it.
It all started with underwear, Liam.
It's true.
True. It was just an offhand little conversation we were having about the Minotaur and where does he get his tidy whities, and maybe he knits them himself, and that just sort of, I mean, excuse the pun, but it spun into something totally huge and new and different.
And that was during a sound check, if I remember, on the Sun and the Star tour. And it got in my head where I was like, but that is actually compelling of I mean, I think the initial idea was, what does a domesticated Minotaur do? But then it was like, well, why? Why is he making his own underwear? And we had conversations when writing Sun and the Star about who was going to make appearances. And we had decided not to have Hazel as a big part of the story because that's Nico's, half sibling. She deserves a bigger part. So when the very inkling of an idea of a sequel was, in our minds, I think we were both like, well, Hazel has to be in it. And so from that is where then I came up with this idea of, this core trait that I think Nico and Hazel share is that they don't like to be judged by other people. And I took that grain and then the grain of the Minotaur and was like, let me shove them together. And so the initial pitch was, what if, at that time, if I remember correctly, it was just the Minotaur. What if the Minotaur shows up at Camp Jupiter and is like, I need help. I am not who you think I am. What do you do? What does a demigod do when arguably one of the most famous villains in the entire series is like, by the way, I need your help. Like, what's your immediate reaction? And so that's sort of what became our guiding force as we developed this story.
Listening to you guys talk is like watching a scientist like get into a groove. Like, I just love seeing how the story starts and how that explodes. Just the idea of how we're going to piece together the narrative. You brought up Hazel. So great to see Hazel again. So great to hear her voice again. Rick, she's a character that's been around. I feel like Sneaky has one of the most like populated bibliographies when it comes to how many times she's appeared in Percy Jackson books. But to my knowledge, you haven't written her in 5 years since Tower of Nero.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so with that in mind, what was it like to get back inside her head and speak her voice a bit?
It was really great. And again, I think, Mark was so additive to the process of exploring her character and who she is in this moment, which is very different than she was the last time we saw her, and certainly in the Heroes of Olympus. I mean, she is now a leader and with great responsibilities, and she's making huge choices that have consequences, and she needs help. And so she's in, a pretty precarious situation here. She has to figure out a way forward. So it was a lot of fun to do that.
Mm-hmm. And Mark, for you, getting to get into the psyche of a new character this time around, I feel like Nico and Will like the back of your hand at this point, but Hazel got to be a little bit of a new challenge.
A new challenge, but it was one I wanted to undertake because I love that character so much. And in particular, what I know we talked about, and as the drafts were going back and forth, what we wanted to build out was thinking particularly of Hazel's story and finding a way to integrate her backstory into this one, which is she once had, she had this experience with having a lot of power very young, and look what happened, and look how badly it went for her. And so she is not that person that she was, and she's not that person anymore. She's changed a lot, but now she's in this situation where she has a lot of responsibility and power at Camp Jupiter. How do those thoughts that she used to deal with and used to have, how do they resurface? How does she think about the guilt that comes with, well, I have power and the choices that I make can greatly affect other people? And so trying to find that sweet spot, it took a few drafts between us to figure out where that voice like really set in the narrative and what her story was going to be. But it was a challenge I wanted to do because I love that character so much.
Yeah, it's got to be one of the most exciting things as an author to figure out where you start and where you're going to take the character. And the theme of that we seem to be circulating around is reevaluating characters in this book. And particularly with monsters, we addressed it at the beginning that, we're questioning whether or not all monsters are heroes, whether all heroes might have some monster tendencies and stuff like that. There's a line that I want to bring up, and I'll share it out of context, so not to give spoilers. But it's a former monster who says the line, "We were forced to serve Kronos, and after that, Gaia, we weren't given much of a choice in their terrible wars." Do you feel like you both have given a bit more color to what arguably are just henchmen in the original Percy Jackson pentology, the Heroes of Olympus pentology? And with that in mind too, do you think if we go back and reread those books, we'll view any of those monsters a little differently after reading this book?
First of all, did you write that, Rick? Did I write that?
I don't remember. I don't recall what chapter it's from because I read.
I remember it. I know.
As with so much of it, I have no idea. I mean,
have no idea which one of us wrote that.
Yeah, the prose, is so much a hybrid of the two of us that it's so difficult to remember who wrote how much of each line.
Mm-hmm.
But to your question, I certainly hope that's the case. I mean, I don't think I could go back and read The Lightning Thief without thinking of The Court of the Dead and the poor Minotaur, with nobody commenting on how nicely he did the stitching work on his. I mean, come on, we didn't even ask the guy if he could speak. You know?
Yeah, I know where it was also coming from is one element that was really fun in The Sun and the Star was I think that was for both of us this chance to sort of peel back the curtain on the monsters anyway, because you have the people who are working, in case people have not read Sun and the Star, the big bad, I won't say who it is. Um, and even getting to explore them, like I remember there was that early moment that I think where it came, I don't, again, don't remember quite who came up with it, where Nico or Will compliments one of the demons and is like, "You did a really good job." And just at that being treated like a person in that moment is what affected them later to be like, actually, I kind of support them. And I think that was sort of this grain that we unconsciously put into the series of, hey, even though they're in this very scary situation and the demigod solution is you kill monsters, they didn't. And they found a solution that didn't have anything to do with that. What if this book is that on a greater scale? What if the solution isn't this? And how do we rethink punishment? What does justice mean for these characters? Some of them who've been harmed by creatures, some of them who are creatures who've never harmed anyone. Like where, I don't know. It's kind of like the messy. I was gonna say messy camp counselor, student, but that's also just Camp Jupiter in general. But it's like a new level to that of like, well, let's take this to a place we haven't quite seen before in this series and see what happens.
Yeah, I love expanding stories like that. I like the way you put that. Looking a little bit towards the future, this is book 2 in the Nico di Angelo Adventure series. Rick, I know the college books are always been planned as a trilogy. Are there more stories to be told through the lens of Nico and Will? And if so, have you already started to storyboard a little bit with what characters you think could play supporting?
We haven't really made any like plans, and that's not unusual for me. I don't really have any sort of master plan. I just sort of go from project to project that catches my interest and that I think will be the most fun and the most challenging and bring something new into the world. Having said that, fantastic experience, and if that happens, that would be fantastic.
I mean, we've also been both very busy outside of Sun and the Star, The Court of the Dead. I had to draft a whole new YA book in the year since, or not less than a year since we finished this book, and having to jump onto another project. I have an idea. We'll talk about it next week when we're on tour. But it's the same thing. I don't have a master plan for even my own publishing career. It is what is most interesting. What do I think is most compelling as an idea? And I don't think either one of us want to just do a Nico Will book just to do it.
Right.
The idea of the Minotaur, Hazel, those initial sparks were just, we both couldn't stop thinking about it. And I think that for each of us is what is the hallmark of a good idea is I can't stop thinking about it.
Yeah, I like too that we've had some time in between the Sun and the Star and the Court of the Dead because it allows us to miss these characters. It allows us to like get back into the groove. You mentioned you two are very busy outside of the world of Nico di Angelo. Rick, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you a little production update on the Percy Jackson TV front. The last time we spoke, I mentioned to you this before we started recording. Like 2 days later, you hopped on a flight to Vancouver to check out the season 3 set. Those initial vibes, you've now have 2 seasons of production in the can. How does season 3 feel by comparison? Things moving quicker, shorthand better? How does it feel?
So great. It feels really good. I mean, there's always been a very positive, supportive family vibe on set for this show. And I think everyone this season really feels the excitement around breaking new ground and adapting a book that has never been on the screen before. Everyone's very aware of that and very excited. And the new cast members are just gelling so well with our existing cast. I was telling Mark earlier, I mean, here we are talking about Nico di Angelo and stepping into Westover Academy, the very first scene first of all, the set design is incredible, but then there's young Nico in his military uniform at this military academy at a dance, sort of all alone and forlorn. And it was so perfect and so heartbreaking to see Levi in that role. He's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, Mark, how does it feel that there's a live action representation of a character that you've helped flesh out now?
I don't know. It's weird in this because it'll be the first experience that I've had with this because I haven't had an adaptation of my own work done. First of all, I just want to see what Levi does with the character. And I think as someone who has been a fan of things that have been adapted multiple times, the delight in me or the delight I get is just seeing how someone treats someone else's art. When I think of like really, really great adaptation, I return this all the time. I think the HBO His Dark Materials adaptation is one of the finest adaptations I've ever seen. And I love both the ways that it's faithful and the ways it deviates. And so that's what I want to see. What are the ways that this is going to be Titan's curse? What are the ways that it's not? Like what are the changes going to be? And so, I just want to see my Prince of Darkness son so bad. I can't wait. I'm so excited.
That's so amazing to hear. I love how excited we all get about this stuff. It's so cool. Rick, really quickly, I will bring this up too. An actress by the name of Alana Huffman, who's on Smallville, recently said that she read for Aphrodite. So is the Goddess of Love being actively cast right now?
Yes, we are. Yes, that is true. We are casting the last. Now, Aphrodite's, from the books, we know that Aphrodite is an interesting case because canonically she appears as whatever you see your ideal for beauty as being. So she can have many different appearances. Now, how are we translating that? I can't answer. But we are, in fact, having those conversations now. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm excited to see as a fan. I don't want to be spoiled. With season 3, we got like a year before it comes to the screen. We still got to watch season 2. That's all the time we have, guys. But thank you so much for your time. I will say also, there's been a couple interviews I've done recently for other projects where I'm not a Percy Jackson level expert on, and I get in my head, I get that imposter syndrome. Every time I do anything related to Percy Jackson, I feel like I'm in my bag, and sharing a nice conversation with you both about a property that means so much to me, builds my confidence back up. So I appreciate you both for riffing with me and having some fun today.
Anytime. Thanks, Liam.
Thank you, Liam. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.